Over the years, DC and by extension Warner Brothers have consistently tried and failed to bring the world of DC Comics to film. And while some of their offerings have been a success, most of their projects have been failures. They have failed to bring home the bacon financially or critically. But what has doomed the DCEU to the dustbin of irrelevancy? Well, for starters, they've consistently given control of their franchises to people who couldn't care less about the source material. And for another, they have always been trying to one-up their old rival, Marvel. A fine example of both of these things is the Justice League, originally directed by Zack Snyder, and then, like a preteen at a Hollywood party, it was pawned off to Joss Whedon. Both of these directors could not have cared less about the source material. Zack took the Justice League and made it a maudlin monochrome slog that the execs at Warner took one look at and said, heck no, before taking the opportunity offered by a tragedy in the life of old Zack to hand the franchise off to Joss Whedon, who had but a few years earlier made the box office busting Avengers. Now, Whedon and Snyder had very different ways of doing things when it came to making movies, and so what resulted was a wayward Frankenstein's monster of a film, which had an opening box office of 94 million USD, underperforming compared to Whedon's Avengers film that had an opening box office of 200 million US dollars. To say that Warner Brothers was disappointed would be an understatement. They had wanted the success of Avengers, but they had not wanted to put in the effort to make that happen. Avengers, you see, was the culmination of several banger films, like the first Iron Man and Captain America, whereas the Justice League had Man of Steel. Also a Zack Snyder film that shared the same sad tendency towards lens flare and monochrome. While the main actor was about the only good thing about that film, he seemed to be the only person who tried. But he was kneecapped by Zack Snyder's poor writing and directing talents. And so, the film moldered in irrelevancy. After Justice League, the DCEU spiraled down like the turd that it was, leading the ever more frantic Warner Brothers to jump on the ESG train in hopes that they could suckle at the funny money teat until they got back on their feet. But they forgot one of the oldest rules. Never pay the dangled, for if you do, you shall never be free of the dane. This gave us the current era of DC films, which have sucked to one degree or another. Yes, they have had a few flashes in the pan, like The Suicide Squad and its sequel, but those films were not entirely free of the woke agenda either. And while the first Shazam film was not horrible, it was hardly what I would call good. And its sequel, by all accounts, is a stunning and brave garbage fire of mostly peaceful protest proportions. And then we come to Aquaman, which has got a sequel coming up that no one will watch because the lead actress literally shit the bed. The other problem is that they have hired James Gunn to come in and try and fix this mess. But the problem with that is that he has no respect for the source material either, and his choice of lineup to lead the DCEU into the future fills me with about as much hope and optimism as Man of Steel. And so, the DC is doomed to molder under the weight of the incompetence and stupidity of the people that Warner Brothers consistently hires to shepherd this franchise to greatness. But hey, they've finally become just like Marvel, completely irrelevant. Tell me what you think down below. Maybe I'm full of crap, maybe I'm not. This is Pete, the Heretical Nerd, signing off.